Connecticut Towns Clerks Association, West Hartford Town Clerk Essie LeBrat, President of the Connecticut Bar Association, Monty Frank, and Sherry Quickmeyer, Executive Director of Common Cause in Connecticut, one of the watchdog groups about elections here in Connecticut. And it's a great pleasure to be joined by all these folks who really do the bulk of the work out there to prepare for November 8th. So I'm going to start with some of the things that we have done collectively, just as an overview of what goes on here in Connecticut to prepare. So in recent months, we have worked with the Connecticut Bar Association. We have a volunteer attorneys program, which gives this office a valuable rapid response capacity to look into election day problems. We've had this program with the Bar Association for the last 3 years. It's a very valuable program for us. It's a neutral, nonpartisan program, and now a model for the nation in ability to gather facts on the grounds when issues occur. So if we get a report, and we get many reports on election day, we field about 5,000 phone calls just in my office alone, and I'm sure the State Election Enforcement Commission fields another 5,000. And there are lots of different questions that are asked, but if there's some problem that occurs in an election site that we think needs more information, we now have a large number of attorneys across the state who have volunteered to kind of go in and find out if it warrants further action. They report back to us. It's been a wonderful program and collaboration. Also, with the State Elections Enforcement Commission, my office staffs a hotline for election day complaints. We staff that every year. That number is 866-733-2463, and Mr. Brandy will tell you more about that, but it is also an important resource for voters. And of course, the registrars of voters, who are sort of the unsung heroes of Election Day, who do so much work prior to Election Day, after Election Day. And I have gone through many times now with the press exactly the process we go through to ensure that our elections are secure. I know there have been a lot of questions about this year, but I hope we have assured people that there are so many checks and balances. We have a paper ballot, we have post-election audits, so I'm hoping that Melissa Russell will go into a little more of that. And together we have also worked on certification courses for election officials, conferences. We've had conference calls with all the towns. So communication has been key for us. And of course there are many new statutes that have been put in place in the last few years to help us with better communication. Now every town has an emergency plan for elections that has been reported to our office, so we don't have confusion about what should happen in case the lights go out. We've had several major storms just before Election Day in the last few years in Connecticut. That, frankly, has been the biggest emergency we have faced. We had polling places underwater one year. You know, so what one does in case of a situation like that becomes very important, and you never know. So far, the weather looks good, but, you know, around here, you can't tell. We have also discussed various scenarios with our counterparts in federal law enforcement. Every year we have a meeting with a contact at the FBI, and I am on a committee with the Department of Homeland Security because there has been some concern about cybersecurity, which is something we've only recently had to begin worrying about. So we've had help from the Department of Homeland Security. They have helped us secure our voter registration database, and I can't say it often enough, no tabulator is connected to the internet, not anywhere in the country. So I hope by now we have sort of debunked this theory that there's going to be some internet explosion on Election Day that will cause the results of the election to be transformed. It really is a very far-fetched kind of an idea, and I think by now people are pretty convinced of that, at least. We've been asked a lot about voter intimidation. People are really feeling very worked up about this election, I guess is the way to say it. We have, all of us, locally and statewide and nationally, had lots and lots of questions from people about what's going to happen at the polling places if someone gets upset, if something goes amiss, whatever it is. Because there are a lot of people that are very, very concerned about the counting of their votes and, you know, whether their candidate is going to win, frankly. So we have systems to deal with that. The one thing I want to say about that especially, and I think Melissa Russell will go into this in more detail, is that moderators are in charge of a polling place. Not me, not even the registrars or the clerks. There is a moderator in every polling place in Connecticut, and we have almost 800 of them. And that moderator on election day is charged with keeping order and following the law in that polling place. We, of course, are on hand to help advise people should there be a problem. And of course, voters can always call our hotline or report problems they see at the polls. But I want to stress that because I think it's important to have someone on site who can make decisions about whether there is voter intimidation, whether people are campaigning inside the 75-foot line, for example, whether someone from the press, perhaps, is being disruptive of the polling process. So I think that's something I want everyone to understand, because that is the person you should talk to if you're having a problem. There is no observer status in Connecticut. That's another question that's come up. So if someone's bothering voters on their way into the polls, they will be asked to stop. We've had many in-depth conversations on this matter. We're confident that everyone knows what to do if they encounter anyone being harassed. It will not be tolerated. For voters, I have one message. Please make sure you're properly registered to vote, because that avoids a lot of confusion on election day. The best thing you can do is go to our website, myvote.ct.gov. You can get information there. Make sure you're registered. We have had a lot of cases of people duplicate registering. They're so concerned that they're properly registered. The easiest thing to do, rather than registering again, go to the website, myvote.ct.gov. You can get a picture of your ballot. You can make sure you're properly registered and where your polling place is, and a lot of other information. So with that being said, this is certainly an exciting election. The first one with election day registration, so that will be new in Connecticut. And this first time we will be using our new election results reporting system, where all towns now will upload the data from the tabulators directly into a computer system that we have designed. And so you'll be able to watch the results come in real time on our website. This is the first time we've used it statewide, so we're hoping it goes well. We've done a lot of training with everyone, and I think it will really make our results not only faster, which is important, but also more accurate, and I think that's almost more important. People should remember that the results you see on election night are unofficial. That means we have a full 2 to 3 weeks to check out the results and make sure they're accurate. So for those people who are concerned that maybe somehow the results would be hacked on their way to the state reporting system, I would say you don't need to worry, because there's plenty of time where we check back. And again, we have a paper-based system in Connecticut, and ironically, that turns out to be a great thing, because you can check back to the paper. We have challenges, but I think we're ready for the task. A lot has gone into this, and I now want to turn to some of my colleagues here to talk more in depth about some of these processes. So let's start with Monty Frank. Attorney Frank is the president of the Connecticut Bar Association this year.
Thank you, Secretary, for your hard work and leadership in ensuring that the right to vote is guaranteed for our citizens. The Connecticut Bar Association is committed to advancing justice and defending the rule of law. There's nothing more fundamental to our democracy than the right to vote. In an effort to make sure that no one is disenfranchised, the Connecticut Bar Association will once again have Connecticut lawyers on call to assist the Secretary of State on election day. If a problem arises at a polling place, a Connecticut lawyer will be dispatched to determine what the issue is and report the information to the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State will then provide instructions to the attorney. The Connecticut lawyers will be the eyes and ears of the Secretary of State. The Connecticut Bar Association began this partnership with the Secretary of State in 2012. It is called the Secretary's Legal Assistant Project. Since the Secretary has 4 lawyers on staff on election day, it would be impossible for her office to cover our 169 towns. That's why the Connecticut Bar Association plays such an important role. We have 110 volunteer lawyers across the state on call. The volunteer lawyers are nonpartisan, they are neutral, they have participated in a training session with the Secretary of State and will be ready to immediately report to a polling place if necessary and be the eyes on the ground for the Secretary of State. To be clear, any decision as to what action to take will be made by the Secretary of State. Through this program, we are able to expand the reach of the Secretary of State on Election Day and provide another measure to make sure election rules are followed so that the people of Connecticut are able to vote without confusion, interference, or intimidation. And we are proud to serve in this role.